And I've had other firms that sort of took the note, continued down the wrong path, took the note again, continued down the wrong path. And then I moved the work and they were like, wait, what? Can you tell me more about why that happened? And I'm like, well, I did. And you didn't.
Welcome to Spill the Ink, a podcast by Reputation Inc., where we feature experts in growth and brand visibility for law firms and architecture, engineering, and construction firms. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Calcote King. I'm your host, and I'm also the principal and president of Reputation Inc. We are a public relations and thought leadership marketing agency for B2B professional services firms, such as law firms. To learn more, go to rep-inc, that's inc with a K.com. So today we're going to talk about how marketing can get clients in the door, but what happens after they've walked through it? What does it take to keep them happy and engaged? For today's episode, we're joined by entertainment lawyer Candisse Williamson, who is the general counsel at Hartbeat, a global media company founded by Kevin Hart. She'll walk us through a general counsel's perspective on the art of client partnership, why intention makes or breaks relationships, and what tactics stand out when courting a prospective client. So thank you so much and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Michelle. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So let's talk about client engagement. Well, first, actually, before we get into the meat of the discussion, I'd love to learn a little bit about you and your background and how you got to where you are with Kevin Hart's company.
Sure, of course. Happy to do that. Yeah, so I started my career in big law. I'd spent the first 5.5 years of my career doing corporate M&A and private equity transactions at 2 large law firms. I then went in-house at Madison Square Garden in New York, and that's where I shifted into entertainment, obviously live entertainment there. Most of my work was focused on the Rockette Christmas show at Radio City. So I spent another 5 years there. And then I moved to LA and got into sort of more traditional television and film. And so my role first at Skybound, which is a comic book sort of founded by a comic book owner, and they do everything from The Walking Dead to Invincible. And that was the first opportunity where I really started and formed a legal department from the ground up. And so I spent 4 years building that function out. And then after 4 years there, I joined Hartbeat to effectively do the same thing. Also the first lawyer to join the company and built out the legal function. And in those 2 roles in particular, I obviously had a lot of interaction, selecting the right outside counsel and keeping the right outside counsel on my bench, so to speak.
Awesome. Good. Well, perfect. So tell us about client engagement. So you've been at firms and you've been in-house. So how has that evolved over the course of your career, and what's different about how firms approach relationships today?
Yeah, I found when I was in a firm and obviously this is sort of a different time. I started my career even before the housing market crash, where a lot of law firms had layoffs and stopped doing, big splashy client events. So I was expecting when I was a client still to have some of those big flashy client events, to be sort of wined and dined a little bit. I think that still happens for a certain client level, obviously. But what I found is that really isn't the case. I'm not being, swooped around, taken to, interesting events by firms. Most of the time, it really is a personal relationship, especially with the size of firms that I'm working with. And, on one hand, maybe that's slightly disappointing, but on the other hand, I think there's a lot of other touch points that are a lot more meaningful with firms in this space. So I'm finding more, small dinner invitations, maybe a conference invitation for things that they might be throwing. And we can certainly talk more about whether those things are effective or not, but it's definitely not sort of, the big splashy events are not necessarily the things that the firms are doing anymore.
Yeah, that's interesting. So let's pivot to bringing on outside counsel, because you've said you're working, you've built up law departments. This is your second go round at doing that. Yeah. How have you actually gone about finding and selecting firms? What's helped you to drive those decisions?
Great question. So typically I focus on relationships that I already have, people that I trust, that I know has done great work. and I've worked with. So, for example, I go back to people that I started my career with who are now partners at the firms that I was trained at, where I know they've gotten good training because I've gotten good training. I also talk to peer companies, right? So when I started at Hartbeat, for example, I reached out to other GCs of similarly situated celebrity-helmed companies to say, hey, who are you guys using for this part of your business? And so once I have a trusted relationship that I know they understand sort of what my standards are, what types of issues we're facing from an industry perspective, we often get to the right person, and it may take a conversation or two through those referrals, but I generally appreciate a grounded referral, not from like a friend of a friend, but really a trusted advisor to a trusted
Mm.
advisor who really knows what they're doing in the space and can build out the level of expertise that I really need to serve the business.
Yeah, yeah, it's such an important thing in this industry. So
Mhm.
once you've brought on that outside counsel, what does proactive relationship maintenance look like from a law firm? What have, as you've been working with these firms, what are some of the touch points that stand out to you?
I think, yeah, a couple things. The first thing is most law firms, big or small, have the benefit of having their finger on the industry because they're servicing so many different clients. And so I think if law firms that take the opportunity to connect dots for me proactively is really helpful. So for example, there could be an opportunity that they're working on a deal with one client for one thing, and they may say, I think Hartbeat might be trying to do something similar. Maybe you guys should just meet. I think it'd be good for you guys
Mm,
to get to know each other. Even if it doesn't result in anything but an easier deal for me to do in 9 months when we actually do have something with that other company. Just making relationship connections, I think, across industry is really helpful when firms really think about what I'm dealing with and what could benefit me and the company. Another touch point is industry expertise.
yeah.
So when a firm sort of proactively says, hey, did you know that this new XYZ law is coming down the pike? And it could look like a client alert, but it's also often better if it's just like an article and they thought about how this might affect our business or how it might, be something that I need to be thinking about as I'm putting together, XYZ deal. I really value firms that understand my particular business, where we sit in the industry and where the industry is headed, even ahead of what I can really think about it and offer some context more broadly. Because oftentimes in house, your head is down and you're focused on the thing in front of you. And I appreciate, firms that really are in the business with me, but also can use their broader scope to help me think more broadly from time to time. So those two things are a bit more intentional and
Yeah.
intimate, so to speak, that I found a lot of value out of when firms
Yeah.
do it.
Like an advisor relationship, not just
Mhm.
taking orders, but really thinking about your business and your issues.
Totally.
Yeah. So, has there been a time when a firm got that client relationship right? What did it do to really make them stand out? And it might be those two things you mentioned, or
Mhm.
what comes to you?
I think, we've talked a lot about sort of the courting and marketing components of it, but you can't ever forget that the quality of the work has to be strong.
Hmm.
And so we can have all of the conversations from trusted advisor and you can send me all the articles, but you got to deliver on the work. And so
Hmm.
when I have a firm or a number of firms that really find the right associate for the right level, for the right billing rate, to really deliver on the substance of the work quickly, if they can make my job easier, make it more efficient for me or those on my team, they will always get it right in my book that way. Nothing can replace smart lawyering and solid work product. Nothing.
Yeah.
You can do all the fancy things, and it doesn't matter if the work is too expensive,
Right.
too slow, and not well done. So that's one. I really need a solid advisor who is showing up on the work front. So I think that's essential and
Yeah.
kind of goes without saying, but I want to make sure that I do say that.
Hmm.
Um, I think the other place where people get it right is accepting feedback. So, I try to um, be a very thoughtful, direct communicator because I need my law firms and I hope they understand how much I appreciate the work that they do, because I couldn't do my job without
Mhm.
their support. But there are times where they get it wrong, whether it's the quality of the work, whether it's the speed, whether it's the fee, or really, oftentimes you may have heard this, right? Like firms can overdo it, right? It's like,
Right.
I don't need the 40-page memo. I need you to
Right.
just tell me the risks, have a memo in the background if you need it for a CYA, but I just need to know what to do,
Right.
and like get it done quickly. So I've had firms who have, received that feedback and actually took it truly, and made a pivot for me that was intentional and thoughtful, and it worked, and it was meaningful. And I've had other firms that sort of took the note, continued down the wrong path, took the note again, continued down the wrong path, and then I moved the work, and they were like, wait, what? Can you tell me more about why that happened? And I'm like, well, I did, and you
Right.
didn't shift.
Yeah.
So having a firm, and particularly a relationship partner, that's willing to hear you and pivot appropriately, is invaluable, because that actually helps you obviously maintain the client. And I don't want to go back to the drawing board. I like you, and
Yeah.
I want to make it work. So if they're creative and able to make it work with me, that's also an invaluable component.
I love that when you said, "Look, I just want to make this work."
Yeah.
So yeah, and we're all human. Those things happen. Well,
Hmm.
you kind of gave me an example there, but I wanted to ask about on the flip side, are there certain things that make you decide not to work with a firm again?
Um, yeah, I do. I think that there are instances where a firm, over lawyers,
Hmm.
and I really don't love that term, because I think we need smart lawyers that are thorough, right? Right, but I can use an example of trademark, because I think that's an area that I have found in my career to be so easily, like a unhitched, truck just sort of running down a hill if you don't catch it. And so, um, what 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 I appreciate about a good trademark lawyer, and I use this particular practice area as an example, because it feels very like you file the trademark, you sort of file it, and it doesn't make it a difference. But as you may know, there's so many different classes. You can get a trademark for a particular word, for a jacket, or for a plant, or for a television, or for a pair of glasses. And so a lot of trademark lawyers will just ask the client, hey, do you want to file this trademark everywhere? And the client will say, if they're not a lawyer, right, they'll say, yeah, I want to file everywhere. I want to make sure it's
Yeah.
protected everywhere. I want to file in all the classes, right? Which it costs money per class. And then you actually in the US have to show use in every class, which is
Mm,
typically not going to happen. And so
yeah.
there have been instances where I've absorbed an existing trademark portfolio where they filed in like for Kleenex boxes or tissue boxes, and I'm like, we're not going to do a Hartbeat tissue box, right? So why do we do that?
Right.
And so you end up spending money to file, spending money to remove the filing, because people aren't paying attention. They're just saying file everywhere. We want to make sure that we're protected everywhere. So anyway, when I've had firms who will just sort of proceed on the client advice or the client's response without saying, let me just hold a minute. Let me tell you practically
Yeah.
what you should be doing, what's customary in your industry, where it really is going to matter and where it really won't matter, to save you money and to save you time and to save your dollars. Let me advise you practically and strategically what I really think you should do. And I've had firms that just sort of have run wild on that point without oversight. And if they're not thinking like that or trying to rein it back for me because they just want to sort of let the billing hours roll, that is an easy way to ruin a relationship with a
Yeah,
with a
being
client.
good stewards of your budget and your money is a key, I think, relationship builder. So,
Mhm.
when you have firms and they're sort of between active legal matters, how have you seen firms stay present with you or stay, sort of keep that relationship alive
Mhm.
when they're maybe not involved in an active matter?
Yeah, that one's I think can be tricky, and sometimes it kind of depends on the personality, right? Because we're all busy,
Yeah.
and I do understand that. And for some firms, it's kind of like I know and I know that they know that our relationship is strong, and if something pops up, I'm certainly going to call them, no question, because we've established enough of a rapport on the front end that we may not necessarily need the touch point. But for other firms, it's sort of out of sight, out of mind. So I get emails all the time where it's like, hey, I see you're hiring. Might I be able to help you in the interim? Right. When that feels a little more self promotion.
Promotional.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
right.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily what I'm looking for, but to sort of refer back to my earlier point, if they are just thinking about an industry connection, a conference they want to invite me to, even a panel they think I could be great to join, things that, separate from the day to day that may cost them nothing but help me from a career perspective. Those are good touch points. Um, to just keep me thinking about them because I know that they're thinking about me.
Right. And providing value when they reach out, not just coming to you with an ask.
Exactly.
Yeah. So going back to where we started with those dinners, those events, those check-ins. So when
Mhm.
firms that do still do that kind of thing, are there
Mhm.
are there aspects of them that seem effective to you versus
Mhm.
forgettable?
Yeah, I think there's two. I think the first effective way for client engagement is actually when I'm not even a client. So there's a firm that I can think of that, is sort of trying to place themselves as like the large firm with a real understanding of this entertainment industry, on the ground understanding of the entertainment industry. And so they'll invite people that are not clients and not even all lawyers to just be together in different spaces and places. And again, I'm not a client of theirs directly, but they know that I could potentially offer value to people that are their clients or that we're already talking. So why not bring us all together in one forum? I like things like that because it just keeps that firm top of mind if I were to need something, but
Yeah.
also shows that they're in the middle of the industry where we need to know what's going on. And if they know what's going on, then they're going to be more strategically positioned to help if I really do need something. So I do think dinners like that, where it's not just a wine and dine, but it's really to my earlier point, connecting the dots for people that may not necessarily have an opportunity to be together. That's great. I think
Hmm.
the other thing is I have found I've worked at two different large law firms in my career. One firm does an excellent job with alumni relations,
Yeah.
and another firm doesn't do it as much or doesn't seem to be such a focus. And I think that's a missed opportunity. I think because alums, similar to school alum, you really we do really end up at cool spots, and like we might not
Right.
even cross paths at our time in the firm, but we all have this sort of unique connection. And so I think firms that really try to connect their alums. Again, because as I said at the beginning, I often will go back to people that I worked with that were
Yeah.
trained and give them work. That's a really another smart, I think, spend for firms to really boost up their alumni base and offer those connections and touch points for the people that they trained some years ago.
Yeah, that's a great point about alumni networks.
Mhm.
So, to kind of sum this up, if you were to give law firms three priorities for winning and keeping clients like
Mhm.
you, what would that be?
I guess one would be uh, do good work and make sure that tell a friend to tell a friend. So again, I'm out, you can always a firm can always say to me, um listen, we're looking for more work. If you know of anybody that is looking for a new firm, please refer me. And I would honestly look at my LinkedIn and start thinking about how I could help them if they've been great to me.
Yeah.
um so nothing is as effective as a real true word of mouth referral. So just doing solid work is always great. Two, have an industry expertise that's valuable to your client groups. And then three, I would say be flexible on the pricing model and structure
Mm.
based on your client. Like I'm not Coca-Cola. I'm not I'm not Disney. So I'm
Hmm.
I'm not going to be able to offer a rainmaking day for
Right.
a client. But for me, the work is still quite valuable. The relationship is just as important. It's a big deal. For everything that we do is a big deal. So um, you know, firms that are able to understand my place in the market and can still service me in a way that's reasonable is another thing that I would say. Just be flexible about it. And just to tug on that thread a little bit more, there was an instance where I was talking to a firm and I was trying to really make the budget work. And her position was like, well, I don't know how much the work is going to be. And so I can't give you like an estimate of a fee. And I said, well, I can't get this work farmed out if I can't give our finance team a proposal on what the estimated fee might be. And
Yeah.
it was kind of, we were both like, I was like, well, I would love to use you, but I don't know what I'm looking at. She's like, well, I don't know what the work's going to be. And we were just kind of like, well, what are we going to do? And so she thought about it and she came back to me and said, you know what, why don't we just institute like a cap of X dollars a month and we'll work up to that cap and then we'll stop and that'll be your budget. And I was like, brilliant, right? Done. And so those types of creative conversations of understanding like the push and pull of what I'm dealing with internally makes a difference and is the difference in a yes or a no.
I love that example. Yeah,
great.
That's great. So to close out our interview, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you think is important to add to this discussion about client relationships and engagement with firms and their clients?
I think diversity still matters. I think that, there's been a lot of talk in this environment about, DEI being not important, women, people of color, et cetera, not being important. I think that as a person who has the ability to hire and, depart with firms, I look at that. I look at what they're focused on. I try to make sure I have a diverse slate of people because I like the diversity of thought. If everybody looks the same or they're not, or they don't care about, training up the next generation of young women or young Black lawyers or young Latino lawyers or LGBTQ, et cetera, that's a problem for me. And so it may not be as important to certain people, but it is still very important and still matters, I think, to a lot of us in the industry. And so firms need to not discard those initiatives.
Yeah. Thank you for making that point. It's a great point. So we've been talking to Candisse Williamson of Hartbeat. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for listening to Spill the Ink, a podcast by Reputation Inc. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.